Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a driving test from Ashfield Driving Test Centre. Now this one is a driving test, so we're starting in the car park. I'm not in the vehicle, but we can go through any of the faults this pupil makes because there weren't too many of them, as you'll see at the end. Now coming out of the car park, you notice the give way line across the exit here. Make sure you're looking for traffic from the left as well as traffic ahead of you that may be turning into that road on your left, because they do have priority over you. A lot of the examiners will do the show me question along this stretch because there's times you might sound the horn or wash the windscreen. Don't forget to practice your show and tell questions before you do your test. And up at the end of the driveway, whichever way you're going, you want to keep the car nice and straight all the way up to those give way lines. Get the car all the way up so you can see around those signs that are on the right, and make sure you're not leaning so you don't cross those white markings for the incoming lanes on either side of you. Pupil does a really nice job of lining the car up, getting right up to the give way line so we can see around the sign before turning out of the test centre. Now as you come out onto Coxmoor Road this way, it is a 30-mile-an-hour road heading this way. The other way you'll see 50 signs straight away on some of my other videos. Just remember 30 mile an hour down this road until you see different. Coming over the crossing, of course, make sure the other side's clear before you enter it so you don't end up getting stuck on the crossing. And then just afterwards, we've got the mini roundabout. And on the far side of that, you're going to see a national speed limit sign. So you've got to make sure you're spotting those signs and picking up the speed if it's safe to do so. Now, you treat a mini roundabout the same way as any other roundabout in the respect that the cars on the right get priority. And you can see the pupil here waiting really patiently for those cars on the inner lane on approach to that roundabout. See the white car there in the outer lane going straight ahead. So you don't have to worry so much about them as long as they're actually going where that lane directs them. And the pupil makes a great choice there to take that gap before the next car comes up and stops them. And then remember, 60-mile-an-hour road up here, so if it's safe, you want to be building your speed. With the queue ahead and the traffic lights, it's not really appropriate on this occasion. You see the pupil lining up for the right turn as well. Don't forget those mirror checks and signals before you enter that lane. And then, of course, keep a good space behind the car when you're queuing behind the other vehicle. In terms of waiting at red lights as well, keep your eyes moving. Be aware of cars on your left-hand side, particularly as you come into the junction. Now, a common error that I see is people leaning the opposite way before they make a turn. So the pupil does a really good job here, keeping the car nice and straight before making the turn into that new road. Up ahead, you're going to see that speed limit down to 30. So again, watch out for those speed changes. Remember to keep the speed down below those limits, and don't feel that you have to get up to the limit if the road doesn't allow you to do so safely. On your left, you can see the car pulling out from the left there. That junction is a very, very tight turn. So if you're going in there, just like this pupil's doing here, really slow and steady, keep the wheels tucked in to that left-hand curb. You don't want to come around there and swing wide, so it's got to be done really, really slowly. And that gives you plenty of control over the steering then. Keeping tight to your side as well as you come around bends like this. You can see the pupil sticking right into his side of the road. And that keeps him out the way of any oncoming traffic that may be coming around that bend where we can't see. Pulling up on the left here, the examiners will ask you to do this several times on your test. It's just to see that you can pick a safe place and then move on again. Now, there'll be one occasion on every test where the examiners will get you to pull up like this. They'll say to you, pull up about a car length before that parked vehicle. They'll specifically say don't worry about driveways if there are any nearby, and all they're after is that you pull up reasonably close, and when you're moving out, you're checking your blind spot, you're checking for oncoming cars, and you show good control moving around that parked car. Be mindful not to rush, and be very careful of oncoming cars because, of course, you're going to swing out into their path. If you do that and there's an oncoming car, it could cause a reaction from the oncoming car or the examiner, and that, of course, is a high risk, which is going to cost you your test. So make sure you're sticking your nose out and peeking around that car, looking for a clear gap. Now, another occasion here, the examiner's asking the pupil to pull up on the left again before moving on. There's no car in front, so he's not been advised to ignore the driveways. In this case, you've got to stop between the driveways like this pupil has. Don't forget to get right up to the curb, and then before you move away, check your shoulder, right signal, especially if there's anyone around, and move off safely. Don't rush if there's people coming. Just take your time and find a safe gap. Now remember, you won't get marked for waiting for cars to pass if you're not sure or you need a moment just to catch your breath and collect your thoughts before moving on. Now you can see here how slowly the pupil's doing that because the view is so restricted by the hedges on either side. Ignoring that glitch with the camera, once you're out in the new road, just picking the speed up nice and smoothly, match your speed to the environment. So even though this is a 30-mile-an-hour zone, you can see the pupil sticking around 20, and that allows him more thinking time to see what's coming the other way as well, and to plan if he needs to do anything about them. At the end of the road, he's turning left. Just be mindful of that road before the end of the road. If you signal too soon and someone's waiting to come out of there, that could cause you a problem. So you want to try and delay the signals till you get close enough that it's obvious you're not turning into that side road. And again, at the end, it's a giveaway, so you can see the pupil just waiting for the last couple of cars to pass before he pulls out. Shortly ahead, the examiner is going to get the pupil to pull up again. Now, some pupils say that this feels like the examiner's watching for something or they've done something wrong. Don't let it get in your head, because as you've seen from the last 2 occasions, this pupil has made no mistakes. And on this 3rd occasion, again, he makes no mistakes. For this one, it's just a case of the examiner wants to see the pupil can pull over while there's vehicles behind and allowing them plenty of time to pull over. You can see the Sat Nav being set up there as well. So this is the start of the independent driving, where the examiner is going to be quiet and let the pupil follow the Sat Nav. Now remember, on your Sat Nav, you've got to look out for the next turn it's referring to, listen to the instructions, use the map to help you, but don't let it distract you. If you make a wrong turn, it's not the end of the world. The examiner will just pull you over, sort the Sat Nav out, and drive on again. There won't be a fault for going the wrong way if you miss a turn or you take a turn you weren't supposed to. But you don't want to be too distracted by the nav and panicking about missing turns, because it's going to lead to making other mistakes such as mirror or signal timings or even speed use. Something that I have noted a couple of times in other videos is the speed limits on Sat Nav may not be correct, because sometimes there's a delay, and this delay can be several months before a changed speed limit appears on a Sat Nav. So you can be going down a 40 road according to the Sat Nav, but it's actually changed to 30. So look for road signs instead of relying on the Sat Nav there. Turning right at these traffic lights, you can see the pupil positioning nice and early. Notice the lights on the far side, that there's 2 traffic lights. The left one is for the cars going straight ahead, and the right one is for the pupil who is turning right. So make sure you're looking at the correct set of lights. If you find yourself staring at the wrong one, it could result in you starting to move when your light's still on red, or not moving when your light changes to green. Just like the car on the left there, that little delay could have been that they were looking at our traffic light instead of their own. We don't want to get caught out by the same kind of mistake, because that could cause problems for traffic behind us, and it could cause an issue on your test. As you go across, see the green filter arrow there. Now that tells us the cars on the other side, as you can see, are on red, so we can continue straight across that junction. As we turn, remember, we are in a 40-mile-an-hour zone, so the examiners want to see you pick up that speed if it's safe to do so. A little further up, it does become a 50 road. Again, if it's safe to do so, pick up that speed. But if it's not safe, the examiners want to see you pick a sensible speed that matches the environment. So of course, you don't want to do 50 if you're coming up behind a tractor that's doing 20. It's not going to end well. Or if you're coming up to a queue of traffic or a red light, or even a crossing or a side road with cars waiting to pull out, just a little reduction in speed to show an awareness of that. That's going to help the examiner see that you're aware of the environment and adapting well to it. It's also going to keep you safe because it gives you more reaction time if things change, and it's going to decrease the amount of space you need to stop because the speed, of course, is lower. At the traffic lights, you can see the pupils taking a left turn, lining up nice and early for that. We've got a filter arrow again, which means we can turn left even if the other traffic turning right is on red. And as we come out, there's 2 lanes which merge very quickly into one. Just make use of those mirrors to ensure that the car behind, if there is one, isn't making a dash to get around you. And if they are, you can pick up on it and you can just let them out of your way rather than getting into a confrontation. Mindful of crossings on fast roads like this as well, because they can change at the last minute. There was a dog walker on the left there who may have just crossed the road, and that means, of course, the lights could change as you're approaching. You've got to be prepared for that change in order to avoid getting caught out by it and having to brake heavy. Coming up to the next lights, you'll see the 30-mile-an-hour sign. Just be mindful that going across this junction, you must lower your speed to obey that speed limit. If you carry on at 50 across this junction, even if the lights are green and everything else is flowing at 50, you are going to get a serious fault for speeding. 50 in a 30 zone is not acceptable on your test, and it will get you ticketed if you get collared in the future for it. So it's always worth watching out for those speed limits. Make sure you keep under them. Keep your mirrors covered as well. Be mindful of traffic that may be trying to get around you because it expects you to go through faster. And just keep yourself safe ultimately. Show awareness to the examiner. Show that you're aware of the environment and keep yourself safe. Be defensive about whatever's going on around you. Back up to 50, and again, it's a case of picking up the speed when you safely can. You can see the pupils sitting around 30 because he's keeping up with the queue. That's absolutely fine. It's not going to pick you up a fault because you've got a reason to be going that slow. But as that traffic picks up, the examiners want to see you picking up your speed too. You've got to pair that with keeping a safe following distance from the car in front as well. If you're getting too close in order to pick up your speed, that's putting you at risk and the car in front at risk, and it will record you a serious fault on your test. Notice how the pupils lining up on the right hand lane here, and we're entering a national speed limit zone. So because there's a division in the middle, a clear-cut division from the oncoming cars, that means the speed limit is 70. So you can see the pupil picking up to about 50 now. The reason he's taken the right-hand lane is because the Sat Nav's told him up ahead he'll be turning right. And that signpost is Sutton Town Centre, and you can see the lights here and the filter lane coming up where you'll want to shuffle over, not forgetting to check your mirrors and signal before you do so, and lowering your speed in good time for those traffic lights, particularly if they are on red or if they've been green for a while, because if they've been green for a while, they're probably going to change as you approach. As the lights change, just a cursory glance around does no harm. Make sure nobody's going to cause you a problem. Make sure the oncoming cars are stopped, which is what that filter light is telling us should happen, and then make progress across that junction. If you notice the 30 sign there as we came in as well, going into a built-up area, it's always going to be 30 unless you see reminders regularly posted along that road. So keep an eye out for those reminder signs. And just remember, if it's a built-up area and there's no reminders, it is going to be 30, pretty much guaranteed. As you make your way through roadworks, just be mindful that it could affect the layout of the road, the path you take, and the priority, of course, of traffic. So those lights there give you a clear path to keep going, and the oncoming traffic should be on red at the other end of the roadworks. You may get odd occasions where last-minute people rush through those lights. Just be mindful of that if you're first in the queue when the lights become green. And of course, keep regular checks on your mirrors so you know what's going on behind you as you're making your way down the road. It's always worth traveling at a lowered speed through roadworks as well, because you don't know what's coming up and it may not match what would normally be there. Just want to note about this van on the left here, whenever you move out and in around parked vehicles, make sure you cover those mirrors before you move out and cover them again as you pass by ready to move in. Again, right mirror before you move out and left mirror as you're passing by and before you move in. And this is going to keep you up to date on what's going on behind you and up to date on the space you've got around you as well. The pupil's doing a really good job here of maintaining a great following distance and giving plenty of room to those parked cars too. So following distance, you want to leave a minimum of 2 seconds. Now remember, that is a minimum. So when that vehicle in front passes a fixed object, you should be more than 2 seconds behind it. When you're passing parked vehicles, try and leave enough room that if a door opens, you're not going to be taking that door off straight away. You've got a bit of space there to avoid the problem rather than getting caught out by it. So plenty of space around you, plenty of mirror use, and just a good following space. Turning left here, you notice the sign here saying this is a dead end. So this is where the pupil's going to do a maneuver. You'll see the car park on the left here. Examiners can use any car park within reason to do a bay park maneuver with you, and that can be forward or reverse. It's up to the examiner. If you do it at the test center, odds are it's going to be reverse because you're not going to be coming out the space again. Now, whenever you're going into car parks, just remember to be patient. We've got cars moving around, pedestrians moving around, and of course a limited space to work with as well. So if you're rushing around car parks, you're likely to get yourself caught up in difficult situations. We want to give people plenty of time to work around us and for us to work around them. So you see the pupil being really patient here, waiting for this red car, and then he's going to be asked to do a forward bay. Now the aim of the forward bay is driving forwards into any parking space and finishing with all four wheels inside the parking space. If you're not happy with how you finish, remember you are allowed to back out of the space and pull back in again. You're allowed to correct it. If you leave the car and the wheels are over the line, you will get recorded as a serious fault, and that's going to cost you your test. So if you're not happy, don't be shy to correct it. The pupil does an absolutely perfect job here, bringing the car in nice and straight, finishing in the bay. No faults recorded on this. Now, when you're reversing out, the main thing the examiners want to see is slow, controlled car and lots of observations. Remember, when you're reversing, they want to see you looking over both shoulders, using all of the windows on the car to help you know what's going on around you. If you don't look around enough, it's going to pick you up faults, and it's going to potentially put you at risk at a later date when you are on the road after your test, because you never know where people are going to come from in a car park. They can come from all angles, so you want to be looking around just to cover your back constantly. Coming out the car park, the pupil is going to take a right and then a left, and that's going to bring him back to the road that we just came off of. And it's quite narrow here, so you want to be mindful of cars coming the other way, because you're not necessarily going to have the room to get past each other. So in that kind of situation, you just wait for that car to get down to a wider part of the road or to turn into the car park, so you can come out into a nice safe space then. So always be patient. The examiner is going to see what's going on. Don't force yourself to move out into gaps if you don't feel there's a safe path to take. And the examiners are going to understand that. Remember, they sit with 35 pupils a week plus any overtime they do. The examiner will understand why you're doing what you're doing if there's a good reason for it. If there's not a good reason for it, that's where you're going to pick up faults. Notice the direction sign on the left there saying Sutton Town Centre is off to the right. Now, this roundabout, the signs are a little bit misleading. As you turn into the roundabout here, there are two lanes, and they say left and straight on the left lane and straight on the right. You can use both lanes to go round to the right towards Sutton Town Centre. And the pupil's taking the left lane here. Just got to make sure you maintain it. It stays nice and wide there. It's a really good example of how to do this roundabout using that left lane. You can use the right lane as long as you return to the left afterwards and you don't change lanes on the roundabout itself. If you're all over the place demonstrating poor lane discipline, that's when you're going to pick up faults. So like that pupil did, whatever lane you choose, you've got to stick it until you leave the roundabout. Then you can change if it's safe. As the road merges, again, use those mirrors. Just be aware of who's coming up behind you. If someone's going to try and dash around you at the last minute, just ease off and let them go. And generally, that's going to be the safest choice. There are occasions when moving out and holding them up is going to be safer, but they're very rare. Most of the time, back off and let them go is the safest solution. Notice the yellow box ahead and how the red car is sitting very, very clear of the grey car ahead of it. Now, his front wheels are in the yellow box. That would pick you up a serious fault. You don't want any of the car in that yellow box. So the rule is you don't want to enter that yellow box until the exit is clear, and that means the whole of the vehicle must be clear of that box. Once you can get to the other side, make your way over nice and safely. The pupil is going to take a right at this roundabout third exit. Notice the markings and how easy it is to line up with this one. The filter lane for left, the middle for straight, the right for right. Just make sure you're safe before you come in. Count your exits off if it helps. There's one, the bus has just taken two, and as you nose passes two, mirrors and signal. Just making sure that nobody's trying to squeeze around that left side of you before you leave. If anyone is there, then the safest solution is going to be to keep your right signal on and just go around again and leave on the next lap. Up ahead, notice the blue sign giving our road priority over the oncoming cars. So you want to be looking for anyone who's already in that gap on this section of road. If they're already in the gap, let them finish and then carry on if it's safe. The pupil's got an advantage here that other cars are in front of him, so the gap's already clear when he goes in, and that takes away the need to make a decision or make any judgment about oncoming vehicles. But if anyone is there and you're not sure, approach with caution and be ready to stop. Taking the next road on the left, you'll see the tree in the middle of the road there. There's kind of a double junction here, so you turn left into the side road and then emerge into the next part of the side road. Make sure you look to the right for anyone coming in, because you don't just want to fly out in front of them if there is a car coming down that hill. At the bottom of the hill here, the pupil is going to be taking a right turn. It's a really, really tight corner. You want to get the front of the car right into those posts as you come up to the end. The pupil does a nice job there of steering in. The right side, the view is not very good, so you can see him holding back, just waiting for it to be clear before he pulls out. Now, like I say, the view is poor. I can't see it on the camera, but I assume there was a car from the right-hand side and it turned into the road that the pupil was waiting to pull out of. So the pupil was just checking they were turning before he pulled out, and that wouldn't pick you up a fault as long as it's reasonable to say that car could have carried on. Left at the end here, and again the view to the right is quite poor. Notice how slowly the pupil comes up to the end of the road just to make sure he can see before pulling out. Wherever your view is restricted at a junction, approach slower and more defensive, and don't cross that giveaway until it is absolutely safe, until you're absolutely certain that there's a safe gap for you to pull out into. As he pulls out, again, picking up that speed really nicely and then looking out for the roundabout up ahead. Now again, with the roundabout, you want to give way to cars from your right. You'll see the car from the right isn't signaling, so the pupil just holds back a little bit before pulling out to go to the left. Now that's absolutely reasonable, because it was reasonable to say that we didn't know that car was going to turn off. So the pupils made a good decision there. If you're not sure, it's best to take the defensive line, and the examiners will understand that. So as you can see, he's picked up no faults for what he's done so far. It's an absolutely stellar example of how to get through your test safely and successfully. Notice how the road is split into two lanes here. Now, the examiners will give you a early instruction as to which way you're going if the Sat Nav already hasn't. You can see the pupils staying left, so at the end of the road, he's going to be turning left at those traffic lights. If you are turning right, you'll need to move over pretty soon, getting on those mirrors and signaling to make sure you're safe before you do so, of course. Coming through the lights, remember, check the right-hand side for anyone coming through, any blue light vehicles, and check the left side for pedestrians, because you've got a crossing just on the corner there. So it's all about keeping your eyes moving, keeping aware of your environment, and showing the examiner not just that you're looking around, but you're reacting, you're responding to what you see. As we come through the high street, you can see the crossing up ahead on red. The road bends around to the right there. As we come through high streets, a lowered speed is going to keep you safer. There's going to be more pedestrians, there's going to be more crossings, there's going to be more likelihood of things getting in your way. So a lowered speed is absolutely essential, and you can see the pupil doing a fantastic job keeping the car below 20 as he's going through here. I've had a few pupils ask me about these speed ramps, that paved one and the next paved one up ahead. Now they've asked whether we have to give way to pedestrians on these speed ramps. Now, if you look at them, there's no crossing as such set up on them. It's just a speed ramp. So there's no obligation to give way to pedestrians who are stood waiting, provided they're stood waiting and they're aware of you. However, you want to be defensive for people who may assume they can cross the road there, and just be ready to stop if there are people around. Round the mini roundabout, out of the high street, and then he's going to be taking a right turn into this little side road. You can see some pedestrians crossing there. Again, we should give them the opportunity to cross if we can. The pupil's holding back for the oncoming traffic anyway. That allows the pedestrians time to clear, so when he turns, they're not an issue. If there are people nearby, just be mindful of them. Make sure they're aware of you and that they're stopping before you pull across in front of them. If they aren't, then you need to give way to them first. Taking the next side road, see all the parked cars ahead, so we've got to be aware of what's coming the other way here too. You can see how slowly the pupil's coming down here, keeping it under 20 again. It's got a really good view and a few gaps on the left he can use if someone does come into the other end of the road, just like this black car up ahead. And it's just a case of finding a place where you can pass each other safely. See the gap before the van and how the pupil dips in and leans back out behind the black car. Absolutely perfect example. And don't forget to use your left mirror before you dip into that gap and your right mirror before you pull out of that gap. You need to know about your clearance and what's coming up behind you. The end of the road there, again, you can see how slowly the pupil's coming up because it's very, very hard to see what's coming. Car from the right there. Now, I can only assume that car slowed down to invite the pupil out into the new road because that was too close if the car was moving at speed. Because the car was going very, very slowly and the pupil hasn't picked up any faults, we can only assume that off camera, that car's invited him out. So that's absolutely fine. If someone lets you out, there's no problem taking it as long as you're safe. Coming around the bend here, very tight, and there's always parked cars, so you've got to come around nice and slowly like this pupil has, straight into the middle of the road if it's clear, and then you'll notice the giveaway markings across the end here. Be very, very careful that you can see both ways before you cross that marking into the new road ahead. And the same at the end of the next road. It's very hard to see, so you want to make sure you're coming in nice and slowly before you emerge into that new road, making sure you can see that you've got a safe opportunity to do so. Keep in mind that the top reason for failing the driving test has consistently been not making effective observations at junctions. So where the road's more closed off like this, you've got to slow down and make more checks before you pull out. Don't just roll out assuming it's clear because it's quite a back street. The same applies at the end of this road. Again, really slow and steady. We've got parked vehicles on the other side, which means oncoming cars will be in the middle of the road, and that could cause you an issue if you pull out, assuming you can get by. So again, a really good example from this pupil, coming up to those junctions really, really slowly before crossing those lines into the new road. Now the pupil is going to be asked to pull over again on the left-hand side. Again, it's just to see that it can pick a safe place, bring the car in nice and controlled, keeping close to the curb, and then when he moves on, he's using the blind spot and making sure he's safe before he actually pulls out. That blind spot is essential. You must lean forward, look over your right shoulder, and see what's going on before you move out. And that's got to be the last thing you do just before you go. You can add a signal if there's anyone around, of course, to let them know what you're doing, but you won't be moving out if there's anyone approaching. So just be nice and patient. If there's cars approaching, let them go and then move out safely. If you end up having to wait for cars to pass, just remember to double check that blind spot before you move out into the road. Notice the giveaway markings here. The hedges on the left create a really big visual barrier. So again, the pupil's going to come right down to a crawl, checking both sides before he crosses that junction. Slow speed, effective checks, and then safe progress. That's all the examiners want to see, and it demonstrates a good control over the car, a good awareness of the risks. That, of course, is going to keep you safe long after you pass your test. He's going to take the next road on the right. You can see the oncoming car, so of course we've got to let that go first. And then looking up into that road before turning gives you a good view of where you want to put the car, any potential problems that are in that road, and then of course you can make safe progress. If you start steering before you've looked up, then that's going to lead to problems because you're going into that road blind. You don't know what's there before you started moving in. End of the road, the pupil is turning right. Again, the view to the right is quite poor till you get right to the end of it. So like this pupil, all the way up to that giveaway line, make sure you can see what's coming, and then you can make a safe decision about whether you can go or not. Notice the car in front signaling right and how early the pupil's slowing down. Remember we said about those pedestrians, how the car there's waited for those people to cross the road before turning in. That's exactly what we should be doing if people are looking to cross the road. Now, like I said earlier, if they demonstrate that they are aware of you and they choose to wait, by all means, make your way into that road. But if it's not absolutely certain, then make sure you're ready to pause for them. Notice the van on the left there with the door open. Again, just plenty of room. That's exactly why we leave a door's width when we're passing by vehicles, because sometimes people will open the door without checking it's safe first. Notice the school zone signs up ahead. Now, because this is done in August, it's 11 o'clock in the morning, there's not a good chance of there being schools in. But if you're not sure, you should still lower that speed and just be aware, particularly if there's more cars in the area or more people in the area, just lowering that speed to show you're aware of how busy it is and that you're adapting to the environment well. And that's going to keep the examiner happy. It's going to keep you safe after your test. And of course, that's going to keep other people safe, because if you're not aware and you're not adapting, other people get put at risk too. It's not just yourself. So make sure you're responding to those warning signs by checking your mirrors, looking around more effectively, and lowering your speed if there's something going on. Up ahead at the traffic light, the pupil is going to go straight across and then turn right back into the test center. Now, coming across these lights, there are 2 lanes and they can both go straight. They merge very quickly after the lights. So as you make your way across junctions like this, you want to be looking in those mirrors, just checking for anyone who may be trying to get ahead of you, particularly when you're carrying learner signs. Sometimes people will rush to get ahead of you. So you want to show that you're aware to the examiner, and then you can respond safely if there is anyone trying to get around you. If you don't know, you can't deal with it. And that's what you've got to keep in mind. If you don't know someone's trying to get around you, how are you supposed to keep yourself safe in that situation? As the pupil turns right into the test center driveway, notice he's getting all the way up to the left-hand lane of the driveway. So you don't want to cut the corner and come in too soon, as there could be vehicles coming out of the test center and that could cause an issue. So when you're turning in, get yourself all the way up to the verge on the left and bring the car in nice and slowly, making sure you look up into that driveway before you turn it so you know what you're going into. That brings this pupil back into the test center, and as you can see, has completed this test with a clean sheet, which is absolutely fantastic. I know there's been no faults in this video, but hopefully just seeing how this pupil's performed has helped with you preparing for your own driving test. If you have found this useful, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. And of course, I'll keep these videos coming. Thank you ever so much for watching these, and God bless you.